and welcome to episode 10 of Crippled with Anxiety. I am Will.
I am Danny.
And what do you know, Danny? We've made it to episode 10. We are
Double
still
figures.
double figures. Yeah, who'd have thought this when we sat in that Costa Coffee all those months ago talking about doing this, that we'd make it all the way here.
And have people listening along, which it's not just us talking out into the void. We do get listener figures in, so people are actually listening. So yeah, we couldn't do that without them. But a little pat on our back to say, 10 episodes, and we've not yet fallen out properly, which is good. So
I mean, you kind of wind me up at times, but I swallow that down, I suppress it, as you should do, obviously, with feelings. So yeah, all right, 10 episodes. I mean, we were just talking, weren't we? We've figured out that we think we are in the top 5% of podcasts, of all podcasts, purely because we have made it to episode 10. I mean, I think it would be great if we'd have the listener figures to put us in the 5%. That would just be amazing. But hey, I will take the top 5% any way I can get it.
Yeah, we're on our way to 21 episodes, which we found out is the top 1%, and we've been told in the past. So yeah, that's something we can we can shout about when we get there. But yeah, for now, little wins. Episode 10 is a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So you've had a bit of news, Danny, haven't you? Would you like to share it with the class?
Yeah. Probably won't get as emotional as I did last night, but I finally got through the waiting list to get my ADHD diagnosis appointment. And after an hour and 45 minutes of going through my tragic backstory, the doctor with years of experience actually confirmed that I've got ADHD. It's not just something that I say, I might be missing things because of this, or I might be a bit distracted because of this. It's actually a diagnosable disorder. And this one, unlike OCD, which is classed as sort of a severe mental disorder, ADHD is actually classed as a disability because it is so disabling to everyday life, and that and OCD goes hand in hand. So as he told me that he'd confirmed it, I started to not break down, but I got teary for sure, because it's when people start giving you that diagnosis and say it's not your fault, there's a reason for all this. It's just quite freeing. So I'm officially disordered, Danny, because I've got multiple disorders. ADHD confirmed, OCD confirmed, IBS was confirmed. We're on our way to completing the alphabet. So yeah, good news, but also sad news, because it's like, a disorder. But it gives me a chance now to be kinder to myself, to allow people to understand why I'm like I am. It's not just personality trait as such. It's something that I need sort of support with, and I can get that now, which is great.
I always think it must be a massive relief, as you said, for people who get that diagnosed with mental health conditions, because as we've talked about in the past, you break your arm, everybody can see you've broken your arm, and you get sort of the sympathy or whatever that comes with that. But for mental health conditions, we all know that it happens, that people don't believe you, or think you're just putting it on, or whatever. And I've seen it happen. People roll their eyes when you mention that you've got a mental health condition, or whatever. But so to actually be diagnosed and to be told, well, as you said, I'm not making this up, it's not in my head, although I guess technically it is in your head. Well, you see what I'm saying? It just must be such a huge relief.
Well, it's the two that so OCD is very much it's portrayed as, well, you must be clean and tidy and have a spotless house and be really ordered, and that's just not what OCD is. And ADHD, what's sad is, like, so many people are getting to my age now, and actually they say there's a big spike in cases of people being diagnosed with ADHD, and it's because we've got more understanding of it now. And it's not just looking back, and girls have struggled with this a lot more, is that it was seen as a mental illness or a disorder that boys got because they were rowdy, rambunctious, boisterous, naughty. And that's not what ADHD is. It's what society, like, those emotions that are shown by young boys growing up that have this are just deemed as bad or negative. And there was a stat the other day that, and not everyone needs to go on medication for this, but there was a stat I saw the other day that someone had said of a study they did of people that were late diagnosed with ADHD and those that didn't have medication as a kid because either the parents didn't believe them or didn't want to go down that route of diagnosis for it. They just said, oh, they're naughty or whatever. Those that were unmedicated were 180% more likely to be addicted to Class A drugs when they got to adulthood because they were self-medicating for something that they were told was just bad behavior. So they were almost punishing themselves and trying to escape from something that they could have got support with a lot earlier. So I think the spike now is because people understand it more. And it's great for young girls as well, especially with ADHD and autism, is because, again, it's something that in the female population is something that it was always deemed as like boys with certain behavioral characteristics. There's a spike in it now because we understand it more, and it's sad that it's taken to get to 31 to get that diagnosis, because when you look back in the questions that you're asked about your childhood, it's present from being a child, but you don't know. Like I'm not great at maths, as we found out off pod trying to figure out the percentage of what sort of total podcasts we are, but there was also a point at school where I wasn't great at maths because I couldn't focus on maths problems for too long. Like, I was great at the stuff where it was like sport, and it's great for that because we're coming on to an episode that's going to discuss this. But English, like getting up and doing presentations or talking, you can be emotive and reactive and you can bounce around a little bit. I couldn't sit there and look at a maths question that's going to take me 15 minutes and show on my working out and do it. It wasn't because I couldn't do the question, it's because I couldn't focus for that long. So you grow up thinking, I'm not good at something, I'm badly behaved. And you can see why it's quite sad to actually get diagnosed at this stage, because it's like, I didn't have to wait 31 years, but I did. But now going forward, hopefully we can use that, like these late diagnoses, to look at children a lot earlier and get them the support that they need, because it is just a support-based disorder, to allow them to feel comfortable and just get the best out of them. So, yeah, ADHD over here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for you. I think. I mean, as you said, it's weird because it's great. You know, you've got diagnosis. You can now have a plan moving forward. You recognise medication, therapy, whatever the treatment might encompass. But at the same time, yeah, it's another disorder, and it's never nice being told you've got something else not quite.
No, but likewise with your stuff and with my stuff, and this is a mindset that I'm sort of adapting from how amazing you seem to do with news like this. Is we've overcome everything else so far, so what's one more thing to overcome? So that's how I'm gonna face it. And it's not a surprise either, is it? Like, I've not necessarily had the support in place because you need to be diagnosed before you can get certain ones, but it's something I've been trying to fight back against for a while because I thought I'd had it. So it's not necessarily a surprise, it's just good to get confirmation. But it is what it is. It's another one that will add to the weight of the problems that we're carrying around, and we'll beat that as well. So yeah, but happy diagnosis day for Danny over here.
There you go, yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, we'll come on to our main topic for this pod, which is sport. You know, we are both sporty people, both in terms of participation, watching, but it's something that having a limitation in your life, having a disability in your life, impacts greatly, not just on ability to participate, but in how others view you while you are participating in that sport. So, you know, as I said, we're both sporty. I can sit and watch any sport on TV. Normally, the more obscure, the better. I always like to feel a bit special.
I'll tell you what a great sport is to watch, by the way, as you say, obscure sports, is, have you ever seen Kabaddi?
Oh, love Kabaddi. Channel 4 used to show it. Yeah, Channel 4, it was like a Saturday morning. We used to do sport on Saturday mornings.
It's just like wrestling rugby TIG where you can score touchdowns. And then there's graphics of like lions that come out of the screen and stuff. And it's just an unbelievable sport. For people that haven't watched it, just give yourself that gift. Because when I stumbled across it by accident, I loved it. Driving through Bradford the other day, there was actually assigned for a pro Kabaddi tournament. Didn't give any details apart from that, so I guess you have to be in the know. But if there's one locally, I might go to it and because that was a great sport.
There's an England, as you imagine, England Kabaddi team. Someone who I am sort of faintly know enough to say hello to type thing actually was in the England team. I mean, for a few years back. It's one of these things where it's a bit like tag. But so one of the bizarre rules about Kabaddi is that you have to hold your breath and keep repeating the word Kabaddi, Kabaddi, Kabaddi as you go.
I was going to ask that. I thought I'd made that up, or it was like a Mandela effect. Because when I watched that, when I described to people, I was like, "Yeah, I think you have to keep saying Kabaddi," and they're like, "That can't be true." It's like playing American football and like playing in the league and being like NFL, 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 NFL as you run into score a touchdown. But yeah, I'm glad someone else has confirmed that.
It's an actual thing. I think you're right. If you people listening, if you haven't gone and watched Kabaddi, absolutely do yourself a favor and go watch it. So a little bit of a sidebar there.
Yeah, if you need proof that I've been diagnosed with ADHD, there it is, right there in that discussion that I jumped in to interrupt to discuss Kabaddi. But yeah, back to you, Will.
I'm very glad you did. I didn't think we'd be going down the Kabaddi route today, it must be said. I'm glad you brought it up. So let's start where we tend to start when we're discussing these things, with our childhood. So for me, sport was difficult. I think is the best way of putting it. My earliest memories of sport are, I'm probably the same for most people, school sports days. Egg and spoon race, 10-meter dash, or whatever the school playing field allowed for, sack race, relays, all that. I hated it. Absolutely hated it with a passion. And I had this condition obviously from a very young age, and it was very prevalent when I was 8, 9, 10, whatever years old. And I couldn't run very fast. Barely run, I'll be honest. It was really hard. And sports days then are very much were based about running race. So for me, it was not a thing that I look back with fondness.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that, and now looking back, I can sort of see maybe it was an anxiety thing for me. But I've loved sport all my life, and I did sports journalism, and I've worked in sport, and it's how we met, sort of coaching together. But the sports days I used to hate them, and when they were coming up, I'd wish for rain. And it's weird for someone that's into sport that was all right at sport. I mean, I hit my stride when I turned 18 and we left school sport, and that's when I started to become all right, because that's when I actually grew higher than like 5'3". I think it took me a bit longer, because I don't know if I mentioned on the pod, but I used to get tested for like celiac and for all these other like eating conditions because I never really had an appetite. And when they x-rayed my bones, it turned out I was 2 years younger in my bones than I was in my actual physical self, or the government sort of registered birth years. I was 2 years behind. So it took me until about 18 to actually grow. Some of the pictures from when I was younger are hilarious. But I used to pray for rain on days where I should have been waiting for, like, I don't want to sit in a classroom, I want to go and do sport. And playing football on the pitches with my friends, I could have done that for hours, like every day. That could have been my school life. The school was great, it's just a shame lessons got in the way. But like when it came to sports day, as you say, I hated it. And I don't know now if it's because people came to watch and there was like, the families were there and they were all like cheering people on and stuff, or if it was just like too much like sensory stuff, and it's not just with your friends, it's with like random people from different year groups that you do these races against. And it was meant to be all this, let's bring everyone together, but actually I never felt more isolated on those days. And it's weird to actually be able to put that into words now, because as a kid I don't think I understood why I was hating on those days.
Yeah, you're right. I think being sort of the focus of attention, there'd be 5, 10 of you, whatever, racing at the same time, so sort of all eyes are on you. I mean, I could go, although saying how much I hated it. And I was just like you. I would pray for rain. I would hope that the day was cancelled or something. But that said, one of my proudest sports day memories ever is by winning the egg and spoon race. Surely
The egg or the spoon?
Hey, purely because I couldn't run, so I walked. Therefore, my egg never fell off, and everybody else's did. So, tortoise and hare situation there. But so being, as I said, not enjoying sports day, really, when I was to that age, that was kind of my limit of participating in sports. I because I was no good at sports days, I had no interest in going off to join a football club or a rugby club or whatever. So I really didn't do much sport. In those early years, really, it took me quite a long time to. I don't build up the courage is the right word, but to sort of really take more of an interest and think maybe I could have a go at this.
Were you sort of really interested in watching sport though at that time, where you didn't feel like you could go and get involved physically? Was sport still a huge part, sort of as a spectator?
Yeah. So for those of us of a certain age, will remember Saturday afternoons on BBC where it was Grandstand, or on ITV.
Great theme tune.
Yeah, great theme tune. Was World of Sport, I think it was on ITV, and there was talking of Kabaddi on Channel 4. There was another sports program which name has completely escaped me. But yeah, I could sit and watch and would sit and watch those programs all the time. I love sitting down and just watching like motor racing, or the only thing I never got into was horse racing, but I could sit and watch anything. And again, before the days of Sky Sports or Sky, when it was just 4 channels, so you kind of had to watch sports.
Channel 4 was great, as you said, like Kabaddi. It got the NFL when that was in the UK. A lot of people are Dolphins fans because that was the team that was doing well and were always on Channel 4 back in the 80s or whatever. But then you also got sort of the Italian leagues, because weren't English teams banned from competing in like the European Cup and stuff because of all the issues with sort of fighting in foreign countries and all the issues we had with spectators back in the 70s, 80s. I think that was banned and we weren't televising a lot of games. So that's why we were watching Italian teams. And there's a big affinity from that sort of age group that was watching back then. It was all due to Channel 4 just bringing like just random sports that people hadn't really watched before and couldn't watch before. And I suppose a lot of your results used to come from either radio or reading the paper the day after. So to get sort of what I'd class as exotic sports for the UK back then, we found a lot of fans for that.
Yeah, I think Channel 4 great. So Channel 4 still did the best, in my view, magazine sports show ever, which was called Blitz, which was an hour-long American football program hosted by Gary Imlach, and it was just incredible. Absolutely loved that program. And they also got into cycling. Tour de France is on at the moment. Still watch it even to this day. They used to just do like a half-hour highlight package in an evening. All these kind of bizarre sports. And so I was really into it. And I think as I started getting older, I realized that, look, I need to try and do something about this. Kids play sports. It's kind of what you do. And so I started, I think, with quite a pedestrian sport, really. I took up golf. Now the downside of golf is there's a lot of walking involved. Distances were not my friend. So that got sort of quite hard. And I was awful. I will be honest, I was not a good golfer. I was too stiff in my joints and things like that. But I enjoyed it. And I had a bike and go out on bike rides and do all that. But I think my first real memory of sport and joining a club was joining a local cricket club when I was 12 or 13, something like that. And that was my first real introduction, I think, to joining a sports team. And I enjoyed it. Again, I wasn't great, but, that's kind of not the point when you're a kid and playing sport. But one of my sort of abiding memories of playing cricket was one of my friends saying to me, and I was completely oblivious to this. One of my friends saying to me at the time was, "Does it not annoy you that they all go easy on you?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? You mean I'm not actually as good as I think I am? You know, they're bowling slower to me, or or whatever, sort of not hitting the ball as hard towards me when I'm fielding or something like that." And I hadn't even clocked it that, these things were happening. And that was a massive eye-opener to me.
That sort of brings the world that you think you live in crashing down around you as well, doesn't it? Because you're like, not only am I not as good as I thought, but people... Again, it comes down to that. We've discussed it. They're trying to do the right thing, but in doing so have actually negatively had an impact on you rather than the positive impact they thought they were having.
Yeah. I remember coming away from a couple of games against other teams and thinking, I think I did all right there. I stopped some boundaries, scored some runs, whatever. And I remember one of the kids coming up to me afterwards and going, "You were shit today." I was absolutely gutted. Oh, what? I thought this was my best. I'll be honest, I thought that was my best game I'd ever had. So I don't know what they were watching, quite frankly. I think we won as well. So, it didn't matter how well I played. But yeah, and that was just the realization that team sports is probably not my thing because I can't contribute to it as much as I would want to. So, while friends were going off joining football teams and rugby teams and what have you, I knew I'd never be able to, compete at any kind of level really at it. So yeah, that was sort of, for me, that was the big eye-opener that I think participating in sport is probably not something I'm going to continue with.
Did it at any point, even because we've worked with coaches of a younger age group that probably could still be playing but went down the coach route instead. So I'm thinking of like, Owen Yarwood, he became a head coach of teams, and like he's only a young lad, but he's got so much to offer as a coach as well. And I don't actually know because I've never asked. I've just known him as a coach as to why he isn't playing at his age, but he's coaching. But he's having such an impact as a coach that I don't think age necessarily matters. Did you ever think about, well, I've got the knowledge and if I had sort of the physical capabilities, I could be a really good player. I should use this knowledge to help other people develop. Was that ever something that you could think of as a kid, or is just not something that came into
nothing? No, never came to forefront of my mind. And it was weird because, this is, mid 90s, and I don't remember having, so say, I'm using cricket here because that's basically my one real example. I don't remember having like coaches. Like, it sounds strange. I remember going down to Nets on a Friday night, and it was parents of other players who were taking sessions. Now, obviously, they were coaching us, but I didn't see them as coaches. I don't remember them instructing me how to get better. It was just somewhere we could have a knockabout for an hour. That's how I saw it.
What's funny about that, and it goes back to my granddad, used to play cricket all his life. So the claim to fame that we've got is my granddad's granddad played against W.G. Grace. For those that don't know cricket, he's the guy on Coleman's Mustard. And they played in the charity game. And I've got the newspaper clipping still from whichever local newspaper it was. It must have been some variation of the Bolton News back then. They played in a charity game, and he bowled W.G. Grace out with his first ball and then bowled out his son with the next ball. And obviously the papers went mad because this is like the best cricket player to ever live. And my family, my granddad and my uncle were really big into cricket and did really well, sort of local and regional level. I then never picked cricket up, which probably disappointed them to no end. But my granddad he used to tell this story all the time before he passed away, bless him. But he said he was like the coach of the second team when he was like 18, the captain of the second team when he was 18. And they went to sort of an AGM and they stood up in front of everyone. And the first team had coaches and like everything that they needed. But when it got to seconds, thirds, fourths, they didn't have anything. It was just sort of rock up and play and try and get into that first team. And you remember standing up in front of the board and saying, how about we get a coach for the second team? And the guy in charge of the team turned around and went, what's wrong with public transport? And McGovern said, I walked out and I didn't go back to that team when he started playing for Lostock or someone else. He was like, because he doesn't even link a coach to being a coach of a team. He thinks it's a bus. And he's like, that's how much they care about sort of below the first team. So it's funny to see, like, generations later, there's still teams being put together with just like volunteers rather than actual coaches.
I know it's moved on. I mean, for those who know me and know the club I'm talking about, I know now, the setup, they have proper coaches, and I'd say I am absolutely sure they did when I was there. It just didn't feel like it to me as a 13, 14-year-old.
So as you say, it doesn't really, there's no real sort of line into becoming a coach, because if you don't recognize who the coaches are as such, it's never going to cross your mind as something that you could move into.
No, absolutely. It was just not even a consideration. It was all about playing, and if I couldn't play it, I'll watch it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still go down to the club. I still went down to the club on Saturdays when the first and seconds, etc., playing and watched it, or as I did most of the time with my mates off into the woods or whatever. But we were down there still, and we still took an active interest in it. But yeah, it was either you play it or you don't. And then you go and watch. There was never any inkling of anything else, and that's essentially how it was until I went to university, and that's when it changed a little.
Yeah. So what? When you say change, like, what sports did you then get into? And did you just continue down sort of, I've played cricket before, so I'll do that, or did it open up other opportunities for you?
Well, so at university, I very much saw sport as a way to make friends, to get into
the social side, yeah.
But again, still in my mind, I can't play sports. I'm never going to be able to play sport. And I remember going up to the University Rugby League table, and it would have been in my first year, I think it was. It was my first year, so freshers fair. Going up to the Rugby League table and saying, I can't play, but I really want to be involved with the team. And them turning around to me and going, yeah, I can't help you with that, I'm afraid. I was like, oh, okay. So wandered off anyway. Second year, I thought, no, I want to be involved this year. So went back to the table in the second year. There was different people on the table, obviously, this year. And they go, yeah, love to have you come down. Come down to a training session, meet our coach. And so I went down there, met the coach, and he was like, yeah, come aboard, help me out, come up with some rugby drills or whatever, help run the, one of the Thursday evening sessions or whatever it was. And, my house was pretty close to where it was. So I was like, yeah, great. And so I spent 2 years with them coaching. And again, I wasn't playing. I wasn't in my wheelchair, I was able-bodied as I could have been, but I wasn't playing, and it was great. I was part of something.
It's great when you get coaches that it's not just about the help either. That, from the way you're talking, that sounds like a coach that was like, I can see me being able to help this person develop themselves as well, and not just have you come around and like lug balls around and not learn anything, just be like a lackey or like just taking the piss out of it. Someone that they can impart a bit of their wisdom on you and hopefully develop you as a person as well. And it's what we've seen, I think, together. And I guess likewise, together and separately, we've seen coaches that aren't like that and that aren't willing to take that on. As you saw in your first year, like, you get plenty of people that just like, no, not asked about developing anyone else. This is my team. These are my players. This is the culture we've got, and this is what we're going to go with. So it's nice when you get a team that is willing to take people on that maybe can't play for whatever reason, but there's still that line of development for them. And that, as you said, at university, it's about social stuff as well. It's not just about the sport. It's about having a group that you can call sort of friends, or in a lot of cases, sort of brothers, because you get that close with each other that it feels more than just a sports team.
Yeah, it was. And, they were great. I mean, I never remember having any conversations about why I wasn't playing or anything like that. How that may have been, but I don't remember them. And I do and still to this day, when I think back about it, I do know that I wasn't quite as ingratiated in with everyone. Because, I'm not saying because I wasn't playing, but that's probably what it was. Obviously, I think if you're on the field, obviously you develop a different kind of relationship to each other than just the guys on the sideline. And I think rightly so. You're in the trenches together. You're bleeding together. So I understand that. So that was always a bit. And I don't know how much that was just me, or or if that was actually happening. But yeah, that I did feel that. But that's fine. But I still felt included, and that was great. So yeah, university was really my first sort of inkling into maybe there's something more to sport than just playing it.
It's very similar to me, although up until recently, when I've had sort of physical issues that we've discussed on pod that I've not been able to play because I've got back into sport as I've got older, I never really had a physical issue. I mean, I say that, I've just said that I didn't really grow. If you look at pictures of me from school, it's like everyone's on this level and then it drops down and there's just me in the corner. And like, I think I was probably wearing year 1 clothes in like year 5, year 6. I didn't grow until I was, like I said, about 18 years old. And I only got to a respectable 5'8", and I'm still awaiting my growth spurt. But like, that was always a limiting factor because, as I said, I was tested for sort of like celiac and all these because I wasn't putting weight on either. So I was just a relatively small child. I wanted to be involved in sport, but I think a lot of people were like, if a gust of wind comes, we're losing a player because he's going to blow onto another pitch. It felt like that sort of level. So, and it's not that people went easy on me because they definitely didn't. If you, coming from where I was, if you saw someone that was an easy target, you'd go harder because it made you look better. And that's who I was in some instances. But like, I played football growing up, and what's annoying is looking back now, and I tried not to believe this at the time, but as a kid I was pretty shy when I was coming to like 11-a-side games, especially 5-a-side and whatever, and like in the park it felt like I was Pele. I was counting all my practice goals and everything as my total records like Pele would. But like when it came to 11-a-side, I just wasn't as fit, and it's not because I wasn't necessarily doing the work, it's just because I was just smaller. Like, so it wasn't a physical ailment as such, it's just my physical build wasn't there. And I loved rugby league, and the knowledge was there because I'd grown up watching it, and I'd grown up around my dad, who like imported a lot of his knowledge, and he's gone on to be a coach and chairman of rugby league clubs. And like, but for those that know, my brother is playing at a decent level now, and he's playing at Leeds Beckett. He's going into his 2nd year now, and there's been interest from sort of pro, semi-pro teams. So he's doing really well, but he always had the build for it. And even when he was smaller as a kid, you knew he was going to grow into his body. I never did. And I went down to the same rugby club that Ben plays open age for still, and Dad's the chairman of, when I was about 11. And I remember the story, and I relayed this to my dad the other day, that they told me I couldn't be insured because I was too small. Dad was just like, as the chairman of a club and as someone that's coached for years, that's not a real thing. The insurance is not based on sort of size and stuff. They just didn't want you to play for them. And they also probably didn't want me to get knocked out and that be like, they don't want a child's death on the hands because I was tiny. And I think the annoying thing about sport as a kid is, as I grew up, like when I got to about 18, that's when I started to become what I'd deem as a good level. So like when I go and play football now against, not necessarily against older people, like around my own age, I don't want to say that I'm playing with old people, but like I always feel like because I was always smaller, I've had to learn the game a lot more and learn sort of the intricacies of it. So I'm never gonna like burn past someone down the line with speed or whatever, or I'm never gonna do anything fancy tricks wise, but I know exactly where to play a ball, or I know what position to be in certain sports, because I had to grow up sort of watching a lot of this stuff and understanding how to get better at things. So as I said, like with my size, I'm never going to dunk a basketball, and I never was at school. But I was great at shooting from the 3-point line or free throws because that was something that I could control, was just It's just me and the hoop. It's not me trying to get past someone or whatever. Or if I make one step to the left, I've got that free shot, so I became good at that. Again, never going to be able to dunk, but I've not lost that. And it's like just learning the game in a different way, and probably overthinking because of anxiety disorders. Like, how do I get better at this? I'm not embarrassed. But then around the same time, and sorry, going back to that, what's annoying about being 18 and being good at sport is that's when everyone starts getting pissed and turning up to games hungover. So your games are always called off because no one's there. And then you leave that school and you leave sixth form and you move to uni. And the people that grew up with you being shite, they'll always have that memory of me now as Danny was shit at school. And I can never change that mindset of them because it's only now that I feel like I'm an acceptable level of like football and cricket and stuff that we used to play at school. Because American football wasn't a sport that we played there. But it's something that I've picked up in later life as I've got more comfortable. But going to sort of disorders, I'd miss training, I'd miss events and things because now I know that it was ADHD and OCD stopping me from leaving the house, or if I leave the house, maybe something bad will happen, or forgetting that certain dates and times were scheduled on the calendar. But also, as I said, when my dad was calling me blinking because I'd got that just right OCD and I was blinking a bit too much. I remember once playing for a team back in my hometown, and a few of the lads had noticed that I kept doing it, and like I turned around and they were doing it behind my back, and I saw them doing that, and it's like, I get why, because we're just kids, and you like, it's what you do. You pick sort of differences out in people, and that's what you either exploit to be horrible, or as Dad did, like he was just calling it to be like to make light of it, but they were being quite grim with it. And it just, I remember thinking like, oh, maybe this isn't for me because maybe people don't want me around because I'm not like the star player anyway. But I'm also like, if you're going to take the piss out of me as well, it doesn't feel like I belong here. It's not a social, fun thing to be a part of. And again, like turning up to fields that you don't know, and my parents didn't drive, so I'd have to ask for a lift, and the embarrassment of that and stuff, and overthinking all this stuff, I think probably had an impact as a kid. But a lot of it did come down to sort of physical build. That it's only as I got older that I was able to. But that sort of lack of belonging in certain teams, I think, lasted until university. Because at university, I didn't want to be involved in any sport. I'd go around and I'd chuck an American football around, I'd kick a ball around with friends, but I just didn't want to join and be part of that, a culture that I thought wasn't welcoming. And university sport, in a lot of universities, especially if the sports teams aren't that great, it's just an excuse to like haze people and get hammered. And that's not really my vibe, and that's not why I get involved in sport. And you see at like sort of higher performing levels, it's less about that. And they're trying to get rid of it in sport in general, but it's always a factor. But I mean, even just coming to now, thinking back to high school, rugby league, like I couldn't be insured, which was bollocks when I was younger. But I was training for the school team, and I was playing at like standoff, scrum half, and like I was being asked to run the drills and stuff. And then I'd never get picked for the team, and they'd pick bigger lads that didn't train, and it was just like, I'm being asked to do all this stuff for people, and I'm actually turning up and I'm putting my all into it. And this was when I was getting a bit bigger, and I went in and was like, why am I not being picked? And one of the PE teachers was like, I'd be picking you every day of the week. Like, you're showing like skills now. You're actually developing other players. You're doing really well. And the guy that picked the team was just like, no, you're too small. And we discussed someone not long ago. If Rob Burrow had been told he was too small, we'd never have the player that came out of those lead setups. So I don't think I'm Rob Burrow standard, but do you know what I mean? It's like, don't cut people off because of that, because it will have an impact mentally as they grow forward, thinking even if I am big enough, I can't play this sport.
No, exactly. I mean, I've got a similar story, and it'd be interesting to actually know, and that's not something you really talk about with other people, but whether or not this is just a trend in kids' sport in general. But yeah, I remember going to the school football team. I said, I wasn't great. I couldn't run back. So I went for goalkeeper because I could throw myself about a bit, and I wasn't scared to go for the ball and all that, So I figured I could do that. And, I was all right. I saved some, I missed some, but in training, and I thought I was doing all right. And it came to picking the team, and they picked this kid who, he's a good goalkeeper, don't get me wrong, but he was just never at training. You know, he was just never there. And I definitely he didn't turn up because he knew he was going to get picked. And you're right, and you get that mindset of, well, what's the point? Yeah, I'm just not. Obviously, I'm not cut out for this. And that was the last time I sort of tried to play football in any sort of competitive.
Yeah, and how many kids are then lost to the game? Like, especially like we watch rugby league and the grassroots level, it's getting better, but for years it's really struggled because it's got to compete with established sports where the funding is and where it feels like you're not going to get hurt as much, because I'm sure a lot of parents are like, I'd rather not get concussions at 6 years old. I'd rather they were kicking a ball around instead, where if you get touched, it's a foul. Like, I get that, but the people that do turn up, how many people are you then losing because you're not an inclusive environment, or they don't feel welcome, or they feel too small, not knowledgeable enough? Like, how many people are we losing because of that? And I mean, we've seen it firsthand from ourselves. But as this sort of got, like, as I got older and I managed to build up the confidence to sort of go into a sport that I'd always wanted to play, but again, I'd always felt I wasn't big enough to play sports that I probably was by now. But like, American football is something that you see, like an Aaron Donald at like, however big he, like, he's a man mountain. If he came chasing after me, I'd be running longer than Forrest Gump. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not someone I want to get involved with. So I always thought, like, that's not for me. But in the British game, it's not everyone is that size. And it's a sport where you can be knowledgeable and not necessarily the fastest or the best player, but you can be in the right position and you can make the right reads and you can make the right decisions. And that's how you can succeed. So I joined sort of American football based on that, found myself a position, but it just felt like a welcoming environment as well. Like, all of the stuff that we said at recruitment stuff was, there's a position for everybody. And regardless of physicality or size of position. And there's also like the teams that we've coached at, we called it the brotherhood, because it was, no matter if you're playing or not, you're part of something bigger than sport and more inclusive than just a team of the 11 players that are going to be on the field at any one time. After uni, was that when you started to get worse in your condition? So it was just like, I'm never going to physically be able to get involved in sport. And I know you've touched on before, like, when you then became a wheelchair user, you saw like the Paralympics things, and that really boosted you, and you saw that side of the sport. Was there anything where you saw, even when you got older, did you think like, I could coach in, I'm going to use an annoying term here, but like able-bodied sports, so not wheelchair versions of certain sports? Did you ever think like, I was involved at university as a assistant or helping out, I could do that as an adult? Was that ever something that crossed your mind, or did you just think I still can't be involved?
Yeah, not really. It wasn't. It was very much finished university and, you know, started working. And I just didn't have time to think about doing anything like that. You know, weekends were taken up with, you know, housework, chores, all the type of things you don't get around to doing. And it was never really anything like I considered doing or pursuing. And as you know, we talked about in previous episode, you know, the Paralympics got me back into at least wanting to have a go at playing sport again in this capacity. Because, you know, let's be honest, at this point now, you know, when I was a kid, I wasn't physically able to do it, but now I'm in a wheelchair. Well, it sort of moved the goalposts to keep the sporting theme going. I didn't now know what I was capable of and what I wasn't capable of. So let's try again and see how now do I compare in wheelchair sports to other people. You know, so as far as I was concerned, I was I was starting from day one, just trying to figure out.
Well, here's a question for you based on that. How much more of a richer sporting experience do you think you've had because of your condition and because you then got in the chair? Do you think it's given you more? I don't want to say more opportunity, because as someone that's like 100% fit and is the right build and could probably get involved in any sport they wanted to and show that athletic ability, but knowing that you couldn't as a kid and for various reasons you've touched on, how much richer do you think your sporting experience has been since you were in the chair compared to growing up without it? Do you think that it's opened up more opportunities to get involved in like coaching levels and stuff? Yeah.
A million times more. I would not have explored any of the opportunities I had I not been in the jail. Had I still been sort of hobbling about, walking about, struggling with steps, struggling with falling over, things like that, I wouldn't have had the confidence to go and try anything. You know, I mean, at that time, you know, standing out in a muddy field for, you know, hours on end was an absolute my idea of a nightmare. You know, I couldn't stand for that long, and, you know, uneven ground. Oh God, I mean, trying to walk over field and stuff like that, it's just an absolute no-go. So yeah, you know, it's, you know, and I've mentioned it before, but being in the chair has actually in some ways improved my life, because it's taken out of my control things like, you know, having to stand for periods and what have you. And that's not an issue anymore. So yeah, you know, that push of the Paralympics and letting me have a go at other sports was a massive eye opener that there is still avenues now for me to pursue. Now, going back to what I mentioned about the cricket, where people say, "Oh, you know, do you like it when people go easy on you?" That actually, you know, that still happened. That happened to me. You know, there was one sport I did, and I again, you know, due to stiffness in my arms and things, I wasn't very good at it. I enjoyed doing it, but I wasn't very good. And yet I was somehow competing with people who had represented their country. You know, now granted, they were in a wheelchair to compete with me, so maybe their movements or whatever was a bit stilted, but still. And, you know, over the months or whatever, it started sort of dawning on me that, yeah, they're going easy on me again, you know, and it sort of takes you back to sort of being a kid. And it's like, I don't want them to go easy on me. I don't mind losing. I'm an adult. I don't know my limitations. Yeah, I have no grand illusions that I am going to be an Olympic champion at any sport. You know I'm not very good. I'm just out there because it's a social environment. It's keeping me active. You know, that was the important thing as well. You know, and as I again talked about previously, I was starting to borderline suffer from depression and things. So, you know, I needed these outlets to just get out, reasons to get out of the house and things. But yeah, once you start realizing that they're going easy on you, and they're not going easy on you and then helping you by saying, okay, did you see I did this? Maybe you should try, you know, there wasn't any of that. It was just going easy on me the whole time. And I just thought, I'm not here for that. It's not, you know, I want to be challenged, you know.
And the wheelchair doesn't mean that you're just you come in at a base level and that's how good you're going to be. Like, as a human being, you can still develop skills and get better at whatever you're putting your mind to. So, like, it'd be better for them to, like, say you were playing cricket again, and if they said, like, I'm going to bowl in this way, try hitting the ball in this way, rather than just bowling it really slow and letting you just tap it back to them going, yeah, you got to hit. It's like, yeah, but that's not developing you as a person and, like, as a player. It's not. What's annoying hearing that is, like, if you're coming of a certain ability, you're not always restricted to that certain ability. You're never going to run a marathon, but you can get better at sports that are accessible for wheelchair users. You can always increase your skill level. So yeah, you're right. It feels like they're trying to do the right thing, but again, it's in the wrong way, and it's an education thing.
Yeah, there's no malice involved, none whatsoever, and it's purely that they don't realise they're being patronising. As you said, they think that they're sort of being helpful with it, and it does. Yeah, let's be honest. For the first, I don't know, couple of months or whatever, it does. It makes you feel like, yeah, I can do this. You know, I'm going to keep it back. But once that realization sets in, that actually no, I'm not getting better, and you know, and part of that as well is down to coaching. They had one wheelchair member already, and he'd been going for years. I know I'm being very vague about the sport, but there is only one club in Leeds, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm calling them out or anything.
It's wheelchair Kabaddi.
Yeah, wheelchair Kabaddi. But I don't think there were coaches there who were used to coaching people in wheelchairs. Because that's not how the club was set up, and and we are a small minority. You can't expect that. I fully get that. You can't be expected to be prepared for all eventualities. It's just not practical.
I mean, you go to sporting events, even professional, where you can't see over the advertising hoardings because they've not thought of accessibility for fans. So it doesn't surprise me, sadly, in some grassroots level sport that there's not accessibility provisions for people in wheelchairs, because we're still not getting it right at top level clubs. So it has to be right there and then filtered down, I think. So it's not necessarily the fault of the people, as you say, that are in place. It's that there's just no experience with it, and there's no extra capacity for it. I mean, I've been at clubs where we have to bring our own like balls and bibs and stuff because they couldn't afford equipment. They could just about send out a message to get a meeting at a park, and we play random games so. It has to be right at top levels first, and I think we're starting to get there. But as you've posted on your stories and stuff like on Instagram, even as a spectator, it doesn't feel accessible for you. So as players, you can see why there's a gap there.
Yeah, that's it. And but what it did do was make me realise, almost what the question you asked me earlier about when I was younger and realised I couldn't really do it. Did I want to, or did I see an avenue in front of me to go to the coaching side of it or the non-playing side of it? And I didn't. But then from this point, after the Paralympics and me going out and trying some sports, it became something I considered doing, and it wasn't until I saw a random tweet from a locally newly established American Football Academy that was looking for players that I thought, I wonder if they need coaches or just someone to come and help out. Because by this point now, I was in the mindset of, I want to get out of the house. I want to do something. I've sort of tested the waters with joining some sports clubs, and now I know that there's something at least that can help sort of pass the week and things. So, I reached out to them and they were great and took me on board. Didn't see my chair as any limitation to what they wanted to do or have me help out. I went to some accounts that they ran and went along to schools and things like that. And I'm talking about American football, and it's a very physical sport as American football. And I've always kind of felt a bit, in the early years, I always felt slightly worried that I wasn't exactly aiding with recruitment. We go to school sports days and have stands and stuff, trying to recruit people to play American football. And there's this bloke in a wheelchair. It's like, no, it's a safe-ish sport. Don't worry. This didn't happen playing American football. So yeah, it gave me that sort of realization that I can be involved in sport. That is a pathway for me, for wanting to do that. And this, I could well have maybe taken this pathway in other sports. I don't know. But as you said, for American football, there really is a feeling of inclusiveness that every body type has a position on the field. So therefore, every body type, every personality type almost, there is a position for you on the staff, helping out somewhere.
I was saying this to you the other day, I got back in sport last week because obviously I've been told not to play sport with head issues and stuff while they figure out what that is, because you don't want to be playing American football and get your head in the wrong place. And it was a brain injury all along and you've made it worse. But I went back to flag football, so obviously the non-contact version, so it's like tag rugby. And as I went down that, obviously I was nervous and I was getting back into it, but as soon as you're on there, it's just quick plays, and for those 3 seconds, that's when I find my brain focused the most. And I'll touch on that story in a second as to how that sort of American football helped me with sort of the OCD spects I was having. But it'd be remiss of me not to say, and I mentioned this to you, that when they were like, oh, we're waiting on someone to turn up the weekend's games, and I was like, who? And they were like, oh, the quarterback is in a wheelchair. And I, even though I like work with you on something where we're trying to raise awareness of this, I'm almost ashamed to say I just went, are you joking? Because I was just like playing like American football, even in this, like if you're in a wheelchair, I don't know how that works, because like obviously it's at waist height that you're gonna have your flags and stuff, and I didn't understand. And this guy turned up, unbelievable quarterback, great release, and he stood up out of his chair and was sort of walking himself onto the pitch by like grabbing his legs, and I was just like, I've got so much respect for this man right now to be out here and doing it, even though everything he's saying, you shouldn't be out here. You've gone, who says I shouldn't be out here? And honestly, like one of the best quarterbacks I played with at flag football, and he didn't need, and he said to us that someone had said like, it's great that you don't move around and scramble and we have to react to where your body's going and stuff. And he was like, it's not a choice. Like I have to stand still because I can't scramble.
Yeah. I mean,
just having him there was amazing. Just having him out there was like, oh my God.
Let's just say, shout out to Drew. I mean, I know him. I've met him a couple of times at other games. You know, there's not many stable coaches in British American football. So yeah, Drew is outstanding. The fact that, you know, he's a very knowledgeable coach, and as you said, he actually still plays. But actually, there is recently formed a wheelchair football team.
He wasn't a disabled player though. When you weren't thinking like we've got 4 players and a disabled player. That you was just like, he's a player. He's effectively the best player because he's playing quarterback. He's calling plays. He's making reads. He even played cornerback at one point, and he couldn't follow the receiver. But in a flag game, he managed to lock someone down by just adjusting his stance. There's just the knowledge level there, and it just immediately that first play, you were just like, this isn't a guy that I even know is using a wheelchair anymore. So you were talking about a wheelchair American football team.
Yeah, so there is a wheelchair American football team, relatively local to us, down in Calderdale, the Locomotives. And I had some discussions, not with them, but when the American football wheelchair sport idea was being discussed, my views on it and things, and how it could work. And it's a great idea. Yeah, I mean, I think they've got able-bodied people as well. You know, once you're in a chair, you're in a chair really. So it's a great idea. So it is becoming, you know, an accessible sport in that respect as well. I mean, yeah, let's be honest, wheelchair sport in general is pretty fun to watch. I mean, you know, going back, last few Olympics, Murderball, wheelchair.
The documentary Murderball was my first introduction to it, and it's mad.
It's amazing. It's basically robot wars, but with humans. I mean, you know,
it's a great description.
Yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic. You know, they're crashing into each other, like full pelt. I mean, I think as one person, I remember reading an interview with one person. They said, are you a bit scared about getting hurt? Whatever. He goes, what? Am I going to get paralyzed again? You know, and it's brilliant, and it's that mindset of it's sport. I'm competitive. You know, because. Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't have a will to win and a will to better myself. And I absolutely love it. I mean, I'm getting excited. You know, we're only a couple of weeks away from the Olympics, and therefore probably about a month away or so from Paralympics as well, which I'm even more excited about. And I can't wait to watch it again. You know, I just that wheelchair sport and just get inspired again by all these people who have at some point gone through some difficulty in their lives and have now come out the other side of it. So, I think sort of gently bringing this episode to its conclusion, since we've been babbiting on for nearly an hour now, sport has the power to be, to bring people together, to make people feel included, but it equally has the power, if done badly, to push people away and to make them feel inadequate. And I'll be honest, it has got better. I see it with my kids' sports teams. It's nothing like what I experienced when I was a kid. Sport now is all about kids having fun. It doesn't matter if they're good, they're bad, or whatever. As long as they're out there having fun, that's all that matters. And if it had been more like that when I was younger, then, you know, I may have played it for my entire life rather than just being involved at it, you know, at my current age. So sport's great, but it has to be done the right way. And it's been the best thing that's happened to me as sport. You know, it's, we talked about before, it brought me and you together as friends, and, you know, we would never have met, you know, had we not both had sport in our lives.
Yeah, well, going back to American football as a whole, that was the one that I found the most. It's the one that I found the most welcoming, and I think a lot of that goes down to sort of it's the house that Dale built for me, like the people that he brought together. So like you and Fraser and OD and Jason and people that we're still close friends with, even though we're not coaching with at the minute. They were also welcoming in different ways and different capacities, and like Jason Dale from the playing side as well, that then got me involved in coaching, where I met yourself and Fraser and built sort of, you felt part of that brotherhood even as coaches. But it was at the time where I'd just started playing for the Rams, and I'd gone off my antidepressants, and I was ready to, like, I had things in place, and I felt welcomed and I felt ready and physically fit. And then COVID happened, and all of that was taken away from me. And now I wasn't on my pills. I was taken away from this new sport that I picked up. I was locked in a house. The world was on fire outside the window. You couldn't touch anything in Aldi in case you died. And like mentally, that's when I started to struggle. And I saw, we've discussed it before, but those 3 periods of TV shows that rendered me useless and like the worst, darkest, most horrible, intrusive thoughts I've ever had. Forced myself to get back into sport when we were able to. And it was back when we had to like put hand gel on every like 3 snaps and like spray the balls with anti-bac and stuff. And I remember for those plays that I was like, for the 3 seconds where you have to focus, my mind was the quietest it's ever been. And even when I was playing like 5-a-side and stuff during that time, when I didn't have the ball or when I was stood on the sideline at American football, my head would be saying like, you're the worst person in the world. You don't deserve to be. All these horrible things, like, think about the thoughts you've had, you're horrible. And it was just constant, and I was just drained, and it was like I was carrying this weight around with me. And for those, when I had the ball at 5-a-side before I passed it, that's all I thought about. And when I was at American football, each play is like a few seconds long. It can feel like forever at times, but like for that period of time, my mind was quiet, and that's all I thought about. And then when we were in team talks and stuff, I looked around and was like, no matter what I'm thinking or how I feel, every one of these players has got my back, and every one of these coaches wants me to be here, and not just wants me to be here like physically in the team, but wants me to be alive and successful and healthy. And that's something that I think I talked about, sort of how I'd had negative issues in sport, and likewise you had, but it'd be awful not to talk about how amazing sport's been, not just playing with disabilities or anxiety disorders, but in helping to combat them and having an outlet and having a reason to get out the house and to not think everything's horrendous. And it's just been a great thing. And yeah, it's great now that it's not just the mental side, but that's where I think we've always said, get out and do a run and go for jogs to help with the mental health. But for physical health, it's not like you can go out and have a jog or so to see that they're developing physical disability sports and highlighting it more in the press as well is huge, and it's great that you've had that experience as well. So it's getting better, and it's just, as you say, sport has the power to change lives if done in the right way. So hopefully we're past the days where it's been done in the wrong way, and we're going on the right path.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. I guess it would also be slightly remiss of us, after we've been exalting the benefits of the great sport that is American football in this country, if we don't give a shout out to Yorkshire Academy of American Football. If we have wet your whistle a little and you want to give it a go, contact, flag, doesn't matter. You've got kids that want to give it a go, look us up, give us a shout. There you go, shameless plug, but hey, you can do that when you're running the academy as well. So, you know, hopefully we might get a few new members down. But yeah, sport is great. And, you know, it can only get better. The more people talk about it, And so more people talk about, health issues, mental health, physical health. The more teams have rugby leagues, right? They've got a physical disability team. They've got a wheelchair team. The sports start encompassing these other teams and these people who want to be involved in the sport. It's going to get better and better, and it made huge leaps in the last, I'd say, 5-10 years. Where's it going to be in another 5-10 years? It's going to be even better, I'm sure of it.
I'm glad you jumped in and stopped me ending a show with another monologue, because my ADHD was like, save it up and then get it out there. But one last point for me. Have you seen Remember the Titans?
I have not. No, I know it. I know of it. But no, I know I haven't.
Well, we're not getting to episode 11 because that is an absolute travesty. But it's Denzel Washington. It's about they take a lot of liberties with the truth and how it was, but it's effectively about a team where they've got in an American football team where it's purely white, and then they mix the schools in the district, so they get African American players as well, and it touches upon like how that social impact is seen, and how the coaches come in and bring these players together with a central goal, which is sport. But Gary Bertier, who is a character in it, and he's obviously a real person. He played in the Virginia State Championship team, and after the conclusion of that season, and you see this in film, and I don't want to ruin it, but it was in the 70s, and if you've not watched it, it's your fault. But he is in a car accident where he's driving away celebrating. He's in a car accident, and he's going to be rendered, he's going to be using a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And I think he's paraplegic, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's sat there thinking, what could I do? This is the end of my life. He was a really promising high school American football player, and he could have gone on to the next level and developed himself at college and maybe gone to the league. But he then becomes a wheelchair athlete, and I think he goes to the Olympics or whatever it was back then. I think it would have been the Paralympics back then still, wouldn't it? It was called Paralympics. But he carried on being an athlete and actually joined wheelchair sport, and that was back in the 70s. And I think it's worth you watching, not just for that, but because it's a great film anyway. But it's great to see that people, even back then, were thinking, like, I've still got that mindset. How do I carry on doing this and raising awareness of the Paralympics? It doesn't show you this in the film, but then he was in another car crash and got killed by a drunk driver. So pretty intense life for such a young guy that went through some stuff. But that bit of the story has always really resonated with me, because no matter what happens to you and what happened to you with your condition and stuff, it can change you in certain ways. But if you've got that mindset of, I'm going to succeed anyway, and forget what the world teaches about being normal and what's typical and what I should be able to do, I'm going to break down those barriers. And as you said, like, it's something I saw with Drew at the weekend. I've seen you as a coach and getting involved in your sport, but when I was like, he's in a wheelchair. And he was just like, so what if I'm in a wheelchair? I'm going to go out and I'm going to show you what I can do. And it's like, okay, so that mindset as well is great. And sometimes it's not necessarily the sports and the clubs themselves. It's the people that we should look to for inspiration, because some of the most inspirational stories are when you've been told you can't do something and you go out there and do it anyway. And I guess that's how we are both living our lives with all the things that are going on in our lives. We're doing it anyway. And that's what I'd encourage other people to do.
Yeah. That's a great way to end, I think. Very inspirational.
Another Danny monologue.
Yeah. I thought you were going to end on and he died in a car crash. And I thought, there we go.
No.
That's a hell of an ending. But you pulled it back from the brink. You pulled it back.
But yeah, Gerbert's a very, very inspirational person. But watch the film. If you've not watched it by the next record, I'm not doing it.
Okay. No, I'll go. Yeah. Find time in my busy schedule. Right. So there we go. Episode 10 in the can. I guess we need to plug our socials. So I am on Instagram at thisrollinglife1.
Yep, I'm at Disordered Danny. We're both at Crippled with Anxiety. And probably now is the time to review. Well, mention the reviews. We keep talking about this.
Oh, reviews. We
need reviewing.
We need review. Please write something. It can literally be one word. Great. Excellent. Life-changing. That's 2 words. Just write something, please. Just reviews. 5 stars, please. It'd be really nice of you. It does help, apparently, all the algorithms and all that malarkey. So please go away.
If someone doing that helps us reach one person that would really benefit from this, that won't see us otherwise, then by you doing a review, whoever it is that I'm speaking to now through your audio device, you could have as much impact as we're having just by sharing it with someone. So yeah, thank you again for the continued.
You can have the reverse of that, whereas people will die if you don't review us. There you go.
That's going to trigger my OCD. I'm glad I'm going to be thinking about that for a week.
So, look at it either way. Yeah.
Yeah, half full, half empty. But on that note, I think have a great week, and we will see you next week with another episode of Crippled with Anxiety.
See you later.
Thank you.